HOA banned my tool shed, so I built a castle that can't be touched. They said I couldn't build a shed. A shed, man. Just a small 10 by 12 place to store my tools. Some scrap wood. Maybe a little workbench. Nothing fancy. Nothing loud. Just a structure with 4 walls, a door, and a roof. That's all I asked. But the HOA said no, or more specifically, Karen did. Karen, the self-declared architectural integrity enforcer of Sandridge Heights, not elected, not appointed, just loud and persistent, and always armed with a laminated rulebook that seemed to grow thicker every month. And I'll never forget the way she smirked when she handed me the rejection letter. We must preserve the visual harmony of the neighborhood. No unauthorized structures visible from the street. Sorry, Dennis, except I'd already started laying the foundation. Let me back up. My name's Dennis Wyatt. I'm a retired stonemason, 62 years old, with arthritis in my hands but a fire in my chest that never went out, especially when someone tells me what I can't do on my own land. I bought this place after my wife passed, wanted a quiet spot with some trees, a backyard, a place to tinker and build and maybe teach my grandkids how to swing a hammer. I never thought I'd be at war with a homeowners association, but the moment that letter arrived signed on behalf of Sandridge HOA with no actual legal letterhead, I knew this wasn't about rules. It was about control. See, Karen lives 2 houses down, on the corner lot with the overpriced azaleas and the weird obsession with symmetry. She started this HOA revival project during lockdown, gathering signatures from bored retirees and throwing meetings in her backyard over lemonade and gluten-free cookies. And people followed her mostly because no one else wanted to deal with bylaws and fence heights. But me, I didn't sign anything. I didn't agree to her terms. And I sure as hell wasn't going to tear up the concrete slab I just poured because some woman with a clip-on badge thought my shed would destabilize the property values. I tried to be reasonable. I showed her the plans, the setbacks, even pulled up the county zoning code. Everything was within my rights. Didn't matter. 3 days later, I woke up to find the foundation vandalized, cinder blocks cracked, rebar bent. Someone had clearly come in the night with a crowbar and made a mess of my work, and taped to my front door. Another letter. Further construction will be considered an escalation. HOA reserves the right to issue fines. That was the last straw. I didn't get mad. I got creative. See, if I couldn't build a shed, maybe I wouldn't build a shed at all. I dug out my old sketches, the ones I used to doodle when I was still working on mansions and resorts. Gothic arches, stone turrets, hidden doors. I took a drive out to a quarry I used to work with and asked if they had any leftover blocks they needed to offload cheap. And then I started building, stone by stone, in broad daylight. It wasn't a shed anymore. It was a castle, not full size. Obviously, I'm not insane, but big enough to make a point. 12 feet tall, real stone, not prefab siding, turret on one end, spiral staircase inside, an arched doorway with reclaimed oak and hand-forged hinges. Took me 3 months and every damn day. Karen would stomp by and yell from the sidewalk. This is outrageous. This isn't compliant. You can't just build a castle in a suburban backyard. And I'd wave, smile, and say, it's not a shed. Karen? She called the county inspector. He came by, clipboard in hand, brows furrowed. Technically, he said, after 20 minutes of walking around, he's not violating any codes. He's using reclaimed materials, the heights within zoning, and this structure is classified as an ornamental personal use project under Municipal Code 58B. Karen nearly fainted. That week, she escalated things. The HOA suddenly began issuing fines, $1,000 for visual disharmony, $500 for noise disturbance. I wasn't even running power tools past 5 p.m., and $750 for non-compliant exterior color palette. All fake, all printed on cheap paper with no legal standing. That's when I knew something deeper was going on, because I wasn't the only one. My neighbor Jordan Young guy moved in with his husband last year, got cited for rainbow lighting on his porch. Another couple was told their vegetable garden was unsightly. And an elderly widow, Miss Laura, was fined for putting a bench under her tree. Karen wasn't enforcing community standards. She was reshaping the neighborhood in her image, and she was using fear to do it. I started talking to folks, quietly. A little barbecue here, a side conversation at the mailbox there. Turns out a dozen people had received threats of liens on their homes, even though the HOA wasn't legally recognized. Karen had convinced them otherwise, so I did something I hadn't done in years. I built a coalition. We called ourselves the Real Sandridge. We pooled money. We consulted a lawyer. And then when the time was right, we hosted a neighborhood meeting at my castle. That's right. At the damn castle. We printed flyers, delivered them door to door. And when the day came, 37 people showed up. Some curious, some skeptical, but all of them tired of the nonsense. And then Karen showed up, clipboard shaking in her hands, eyes blazing. You're violating meeting ordinances. This is an unapproved gathering. That's when our lawyer, Shelby, stepped forward. Actually, she said, cool as ice. This is a community meeting held on private property with no restrictions under City Ordinance 12.4. And as for your HOA, well, we've reviewed your filings. It's not legal. It was never ratified. And the fines you've issued will be submitting a fraud complaint on behalf of all affected residents. Karen went pale. The twist Shelby used to be her real estate attorney. Back when Karen was buying the house she now ruled from. The betrayal, delicious. She stormed off that day. But that wasn't the end. You ever see someone lose power slowly, like watching the air leak out of a balloon? Not in one big pop, but with this high-pitched wheeze that gets more pathetic by the second. That was Karen. After the castle meeting. Now don't get me wrong, she didn't disappear right away. People like her, they don't go quietly. They scramble. She started handing out new flyers the next morning, yelling about fake legal counsel, calling me and everyone who showed up community saboteurs. But something had changed. The neighbors didn't just look away anymore. They started talking. Jordan, the guy with the rainbow porch, walked over that week with 2 cold beers and a grin like he'd just won the lottery. Man, he said, I thought I was the only one getting harassed. That castle of yours. You didn't just build a statement. You built a damn fortress for the whole street. He wasn't wrong. Within days, Karen's little HOA started crumbling. People withdrew their signatures. The email list got shut down. One guy, Mark, found out Karen had submitted fake meeting minutes with his name on them without his consent. He threatened to sue, and while all that chaos unfolded behind the scenes, I just kept working on the castle, added a rooftop garden, installed solar lights along the path. I even let Ethan and Nora, the twins from across the street, come paint a dragon on the inside wall. Because why not castles need dragons? But then came the big one. Karen filed a formal cease and desist against me. Through an actual attorney this time, someone she clearly hired in a panic. The letter accused me of intentional community destabilization and unlawful gatherings. She wanted a court order to have the castle torn down. I didn't even flinch. Our lawyer Shelby filed a counterclaim. We'd been documenting everything. The forged fines, the defamation, the property damage on my first foundation, which, by the way, we now had on video thanks to the neighbor's newly installed driveway cam. And then it went public. Because Jordan's husband, he works in local media. 2 days later, a segment aired The Castle That Broke the HOA. Cameras zoomed in on the stonework, the dragon mural, the flower boxes in the windows. They aired clips of Karen yelling at kids for drawing chalk on sidewalks. They showed interviews with Ms. Lara, the widow who'd been fined for sitting under her own tree. The backlash brutal. Karen's name trended locally for a week. She got so many complaints filed with the county that the code enforcement office had to make a statement. And when it came time for court, she lost hard. Turns out, impersonating an HOA is a felony in our state when it involves financial fraud. Fines, property threats, all of it counted. The judge didn't just toss her complaint against me, he ordered her to pay restitution to 6 families, plus community service and a public apology to be distributed to every resident in Sandridge Heights. You better believe we printed it out and tacked it to the castle gate. That night, we threw a block party. First one the neighborhood had in years. I lit up the turret in gold, served lemonade from the castle doorway, and let Ethan and Nora give unofficial tours. Someone brought a karaoke machine. Somebody else baked a sheet cake shaped like a moat. But even then, even in that moment of victory, I'll be honest, a little part of me felt sad. Not for Karen, exactly, but for how fast we all let ourselves get pushed around. We let one loud, petty person reshape our lives out of fear of making noise. And when one person stood up, it wasn't just about the shed or the castle, it became about everybody. The real power, I think, wasn't in the stone walls. It was in reminding people they didn't have to shrink. And yeah, Karen moved, put her house on the market a few weeks later. Rumor is she tried to join another HOA board across town, but someone from our street got there first and let them know exactly who she was. So now the castle stands, quiet and proud. I use it as my studio. Kids come by after school to help with woodworking or just sit in the tower and read. Some nights I sit on the turret, beer in hand, looking out across the rooftops and thinking how close we came to letting something small turn into something suffocating. It starts with a rule, then a threat, then silence. But not here. Not anymore. Now this community belongs to the people again. What would you have done should Dennis have just backed down, or was building the castle the only way to stand up? Do HOAs go too far, or do neighborhoods need some order? Let's talk about it in the comments. Justice over reaction. You decide.